Hey everyone, I know I don't usually do this, but as a commentator who has had to commentate a lot from home over webcams over the past few years, I have recently been really looking for an upgrade to a webcam, and I was using the Logitech C920, which is still an absolutely amazing webcam. Of course, there's a reason why it's core, and for the price, it's pretty much unbeatable. But there were a few things that I really wanted upgraded, and I do have some experience using mirrorless cameras and DSLRs, but the jump to that is just so expensive. It's like $1,000 really minimum if you really want something that works great. Of course, I'm sure there's some options out there that are slightly less, but I don't have that type of money regardless. So I, of course, have never really been disappointed by anything Elgato. In fact, I'm always extremely happy with everything that I use of theirs. So I decided to try out their Facecam. And one of the big things for me was looking between all of my options. I feel like a lot of the videos that reviewed the Elgato Facecam didn't really go too in depth in the settings, which is by far the strongest point of the webcam. And in fact, I saw a lot of reviews that really looked at it and just said, hey, this thing looks like garbage. Why would you really use this? It's not worth the money. But right now, this is currently the webcam that I'm using. You can see it right now. And I really wanted to show some comparisons with the default settings and the normal settings that I would use, using highlights, using extremely low light, which is a really good one. Stay tuned for that one. And then also, those scenes exactly alongside the C920. So I'm going to get right into it. And first, I'm going to be showing some very high light environments. So here you can see a pretty high light environment. I do have two Elgato key lights, which I'm very, very happy with as well. They're turned up quite bright. And on the left here, you can see we have the Elgato Facecam. On the right, we have the Logitech C920. Both of them set up pretty much right next to each other, trying to get as close to as similar of an angle as possible. But a couple things before we start. First of all, I just do want to mention that this ugly black bar here above the C920 is not an error. It's due to the fact that the Elgato Facecam does have a wider lens, so it captures a larger breadth of the room, which can be a very good thing. Of course, if you're trying to really show off your environment, or even if it's close up, it kind of gives you some nicer angles. But of course, if you really are trying to get a tight shot that can maybe be a negative, you can manually zoom in, but it is a digital zoom, so it's not going to really help with the picture quality at all. But yeah, regardless, that's just one thing to notice. Another thing is that in general, it is nighttime right now. The only lights that I have in the room are these lights strung up in the background, which don't produce all that much light, so they won't be affecting all that much. But this is, like I said, a high light environment. There's very high production, level lights, at least from what I'm used to, commentating in a production level studio. And it's probably, I would say, a level that people, at least like nice streamers would be comfortable with for their streams. And light is always going to help with picture quality. And this is actually one of the main reasons why I enjoyed this over the Facecam over the C920, is just how it deals with light, right? When we look at the settings, there are options for so many different things. Options to, change the ISO, change the shutter speed, change just like everything that you could really change with, say, for example, like a mirrorless or a DSLR camera, any sort of real, actual professional camera. And like I said earlier, I love the C920, but the fact that you cannot change most of those settings, in fact, it probably has the worst camera interface that I've ever seen in my entire life, which is still better than most other webcams. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. And one of the biggest things you can see here is, like I said, in a highlight environment, you do tend to want highlight environment, but you have to have camera settings that work with it. Now, the C920, I'm actually going to look at the screen right here, so I'm going to look silly, but you can see certain things on my face that are a little bit more blown out, right? Like you can see on, my face is a little bit oily. I didn't make up for this or anything, but you can see that like parts of my face are very, very bright, right? And it kind of looks like I'm super shiny. But when you look at the Facecam, you can see that it's not necessarily how it is. Of course, I'm a little bit shiny, but it's a more even, like realistic tone for my face. And you can see a lot of that, like for example, like in the background, you can see the lights that I have strung up are looking relatively normal in the Facecam, and they're very like boosh, like I don't even know, explosive in the background on the C920. And this has been one of the biggest issues with using a lower level webcam for me, is the fact that you do tend to look shiny, and the alternative is lowering your light, which we will look at later, of course. And when you lower your light, there's issues with, for example, like a staticky looking image, or just lower image quality in general, or backgrounds looking silly, or just looking dark. But another big issue for me is that with most webcams, they kind of have like this auto ISO feature, is I guess really the only way that I could put it. I need to remind everybody, I'm not a camera expert. It's just my experience using these in commentary. But for example, if you do something that's, I don't know, if something on screen becomes darker, like for example, like if I lean down, right? You can see an automatic adjustment in how the C920 is reading light. So I'm going to do that again. Not that I enjoy showing off the top of my head, but that's just a perfect example, just because, I do have black hair. And there's a lot of situations where, for example, like you could lean back and then lean forward, and you can see the brightness adjusting and unadjusting. And that's not a setting that you can turn off in any of the Logitech software, just because it is not really set for that. But if you can, if you want to go back and look, or if you just remember, the Facecam didn't have anything with that, because you do get to like lock in your settings. It automatically knows what to do with light, and the more control you have, always the better. So that is just an absolutely huge thing for me. And then on top of that, you can also look at the colors. It may look like maybe my room is a little bit colored like differently than it should be but actually my walls are maybe more of a beige than a white. I think the white it's really easy to see that on maybe my I guess closet door back there, sliding door. So you can see the coloring is actually very good, and I would say that the Facecam is closer than the C920. But also, I did mention this earlier in the video, there are quite a few videos that really just look at the base settings. So I'm going to go change to the base settings live here, just so that everybody can see the difference between what it looks like when you've adjusted the settings, which may note I'm probably not done adjusting the settings, but I was just so happy with this that I wanted to show everybody. So if I transfer the exposure onto auto, you can see now this camera looks kind of blown out. Everything looks pretty good, but you can see, there's like my face is really bright in a lot of areas, and it's a lot of the similar issues of the C920. In fact, the C920 may look even a little bit I don't know, the colors for sure I would say look a little bit better in this situation. Obviously there's a little level of sharpness to this one, and it being 60 FPS is a huge deal, but mainly, I'm just looking at picture quality here. But if you do, change it to your own settings, then you can really control it a whole lot better. And I actually don't know if that changed it back to my exact settings, but regardless, the whole point is that you can set up your settings, and then it will save it actually, I believe, in the camera. So that's really nice, and you can change it in just so many different ways depending on your light. So that's why now I want to go from, obviously I have a very nice setup, but there's a lot of people, including myself in the past, who have wanted to use a web camera in a setting where you don't have the ability to either set up large LEDs, which tend to take out a lot of space either in your desk or on a stand, or you just don't have the money for LEDs, which is fully understandable as well. So I'm going to next show a very low light situation. Okay, now this is an example of a very low light setting. I've turned my lights off, and the only lighting that I have in the room are from my monitors and from the background lights, which in fact in a lower light situation could very much be detrimental to getting a good shot, which I believe it actually is right now on the C920. And just of course as a reminder, there's no way to make a super low light shot ever look really good. That's really just the thing that you need is good lighting, so I'd highly suggest for anybody to invest in at least like a ring light that could be very cheap. But this is, just for one of those situations where we test something like this, because sometimes you just don't have an option, or maybe you want to use a webcam for something else where you don't necessarily want to put light on something. And I think this looks extremely good for the fact that it is very low light, at least on the Facecam. Of course, this is where you can really see the Logitech C920 really needs light, right? It looks like I'm very much in the dark, because I very much am in the dark, but you can see, of course, you can still see see like shadows. You can see the shadows from where like the light isn't quite hitting my face, but that is generally, you know, what you're going to get no matter what on the Facecam. But the Facecam, I think, looks really good. And again, this is one of those things where you're really going to have to mess with the settings for a very long time. I'm not a camera expert. This is just something that I guess just messed with for about 2 minutes, and I got to this point. And if I had zero lights, I would be very, very happy with this quality. There's also a built-in anti-noise feature that you can turn on, which is very, very important for low quality. If you look very closely at the C920 video right here, you can see it's kind of like a static that appears all over the entire image, especially on like the darker areas. And that is something that you do tend to see when you can't control the light settings as much. And that does show up a little bit here. Of course, this is nearly a zero light setting. So having the anti-flicker is extremely nice. Or sorry, not the anti-flicker, but that is something as well, the anti-static. And so I think it performs extremely well in both a low and a high light setting. But just as to give you kind of like an example of like how much being able to change the settings matters, because of course, you know, you can't really change the settings on the C920 in a way that really typically matters. You can change maybe like the contrast and the color balance manually, but you can't really change anything as far as light goes, which I think is the main difference between these cameras. I'm going to show you right now what happens if I go to the settings from the high light area in the dark light, I guess, situation. Here we go. Yeah, so this is the difference. You can still see me on this side, but that just goes to show, like, really, I think the customizability of the Facecam and its settings, and just like how amazing it is that you can actually do that. So really, I have to absolutely suggest this camera. I'm gonna go back to actually, you know what? I'm just gonna turn on my lights because I can do that. Oh my gosh. Okay, that wasn't quite the right settings. In fact, that was still slightly too dark. But I absolutely have to suggest this camera. This has been an extremely strong camera. Also, its ability to rotate, its ability to connect with the Stream Deck is extremely cool, and everything about it. And I just really hope that this helps anybody who's really trying to look for an upgrade for a web camera, because I don't believe that there are really any web cameras out there that have this level of customization. And I still do think that there are a lot of reviews that don't go over the fact that these settings are so good. So I recommend it. That's all I got.